Today, October 17th, 2018, would have been my dad's 70th birthday. And I say would have been because my dad passed away about 20 years ago. I feel it important to share a little bit about my father with you because as much as I believe we need to let go of our past and not hold on to things, I think there's also a lot of importance in remembering where we came from, remembering the things that happened in our past that have shaped us and made us who we are today in this moment. And my dad's dying, my dad's death was actually the greatest gift he could have given me. And people look at me so weird when I say that. I get it. But I think it's a really important piece of who I am and the journey that I'm taking, moving into this RV and kind of stepping outside the box was inspired by my dad. My dad was a teacher, and I remember that he loved teaching. He loved his students. He actually invited students over to our home when I was living in Inuvik, Northwest Territories. I was really young. I was only in elementary school, but I remember my dad being happy. And the reason I say that is because many years later, when I was in high school and we were living in Calgary, my dad wasn't happy. I don't remember a lot of the details. I maybe was in junior high, grade 8, 9, maybe 10. But I remember coming home one day and my mother was sad. It turns out my father had attempted suicide. This is an important piece because I have had a counselor or a therapist in my toolbox since I was in high school. I don't think it's something to be embarrassed or ashamed of. I learned at a young age that it's okay to ask for help. And just like a hairdresser to help with our hair or an accountant with our finances, a good therapist or a good counselor can really help us in life. I laugh now when I think of how trendy life coaches have become, because really at the end of the day, a life coach is basically a therapist with different schooling. Anyway, things did change, but I remember the feeling. Our family ended up going to counseling. We went as a family, and I went on my own. I remember that my father was depressed. My father was sad. He'd had suicidal thoughts, and I don't think that this was actually the first time that he'd thought about suicide. I continued to see a therapist. I believe my family continued to see a therapist, and my father did as well. I mean, my dad definitely wasn't a happy person at this point, but the dynamics of our family changed for several years. I graduated high school, I met a guy, I got married, and then one night, February 3rd, I don't remember the exact year, there was a knock on me and my husband's door in the middle of the night. It was my mom, my sister, and my grandparents. My father had died. My father had died of natural causes. He had an aneurysm. The neighbor found him lying on the floor of the garage. I don't think you ever get over it. Anyway, I said earlier that my father's death was the greatest gift he could have given me. My life completely changed that day, that week, that month. I remember going to my father's funeral, and there was over 100 people at his funeral. People came up to me and told me stories about my dad that I had no idea. I remember thinking, you think Dad would have been depressed? You think Dad would have been suicidal if he knew how many people in his life he'd actually touched, if he knew how many people loved him? I don't hide my feelings. I tell the people in my life I love them every chance I get, because I don't want them to ever feel like my father felt. I also wonder if my dad would have known that he was going to die so early of natural causes, would he have lived his life differently? If he had known he only had a short time left to spend it with his family and his friends, would suicide have been a thought for him, or would he have embraced life fully? I quit my job. My husband and I went and spent a year traveling in Australia. We saw Fiji and Taiwan. It was incredible, because my dad had taught me that life is short. My dad's experience on this earth taught me that life is precious and it's meant to be lived. I don't think of my father very often anymore, but he is the biggest catalyst to me not living the life I was supposed to live. He's the reason why I felt that getting married, having kids, the white picket fence, the job, the retirement, the things that we were supposed to do weren't the things that made me happy. With all of my life problems and health problems this last year, I'm reminded once again of how precious life really is and how it needs to be lived. So I have some coffee and Bailys this morning. Happy birthday, Gary William Elliott. Happy 70th birthday. I love you. Thank you for being the best father you knew how to be. And thank you. Thank you for teaching me that sometimes we need to do something different. Step outside the box and be brave in order to really be happy.